What's going on, guys? Tan Watson. Hope you guys are doing all right. I have been doing a ton of drone shooting recently because this is the Mavic Air 2 that just came in, so I've been comparing it to my Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic Mini. I do have a video I'll link to below. I'm going through all of those differences and reviews coming, so make sure you're subscribed. Also, I did just get in this Evo 2 Pro, and if you haven't seen this yet, this is absolutely amazing. It's worth subscribing just to see. However, I do want to talk about the Mavic Air 2, and that is because I am having an issue that I came across when I did my comparisons that is really affecting video quality, image quality, everything across the board. And I'm curious if you guys have it as well, what you guys think, and if you think this is enough to kind of ruin this drone for you. Also, I have been seeing some issues with like quick shots and your hyperlapse modes that people might not be aware of. There are fixes for these, so I want to kind of talk about those first, but I'm curious what you guys think about if this issue might be the one that makes you not get the Mavic Air 2. So first, let's talk quick shots, because this was kind of disappointing when this drone came out. We were shooting quick shots and it was 1080p only. And I don't know if they fixed this via firmware or if I just didn't see this in the menu at first. However, if you want to shoot 4K quick shots, what you need to do is get into your quick shot mode as if you're taking a quick shot, then pop into your menu settings and go to your camera. In here, you can change your resolution, your picture profiles, all that kind of stuff for your quick shot modes. And I will say, this menu is going to be very important. Every time you go from like photos to video to HDR, you're going to have a ton of different options for the camera that are kind of buried in this menu setting. And if you're used to a lot of other drones, usually these kind of settings are out where you would normally change your shutter speed and that kind of stuff. These are more buried in this drone and you really need to access them more. So get familiar with this. You're going to be going to it often, but that is how you enable the 4K quick shot mode. Also, one of the signature features of this drone was this whole 48 megapixel mode, and 8K time lapses or hyperlapses kind of came along with that. Obviously, you need 48 megapixels in order to shoot 8K, so without that mode, 8K hyperlapses wouldn't exist. A lot of news organizations too kind of plug this as a 48 megapixel camera. It is not. This is not DJI's fault or anything, but this is a 12 megapixel camera that uses technology very similar to what your phones use, like the S20 by Samsung. It can separate each pixel into 4 groups. That allows it to take a 4 times greater resolution image, but that does come with some major drawbacks. So yes, it can shoot 48 megapixels. However, if you're shooting JPEG, there is a big quality dump to shooting that 48 megapixels, and that is because when you are combining those pixels, the camera is able to do auto HDR, the camera is able to automatically scene recognize and do things in your images to make the scene look better. It is only able to do that if it can combine those 4 pixels. So if you are not shooting that 12 megapixel normal camera mode and you're shooting the 48 megapixel mode, your JPEG images are going to be dramatically worse. Now, if you are shooting RAW, there isn't much of a negative here. You will notice a little bit more detail shooting these 48 megapixel modes. It's not a huge difference, but it is there in case you need it, and it does come with quite a bit of file size extra. So it's not something I would shoot all the time because, again, this isn't a 48 megapixel camera, so it's not true 48 megapixels. So you're not getting as big of an advantage on the resolution side if you were shooting with a true 48 megapixel camera. The other negative you'll see on this is when you're using that 48 megapixel mode in order to capture 8K time lapses. The reason is, first of all, you can only shoot these images at 6-second intervals or higher, whereas in the normal 12 megapixel mode, you can shoot them every 2 seconds. So that's a long hyperlapse and something you might not want to do. Also, the stabilization in this mode is not nearly as good because of the way the camera is working in this and also having that long interval. This is not making it easy for this camera to compute these high resolution files and do it very smoothly. So you will notice better quality in your hyperlapses when it comes to stabilization, even when it comes to like your JPEGs and a lot of other things when you're using the camera as a normal 12 megapixel mode. Now, for whatever reason, we do not have the ability to shoot 4K hyperlapses, so you will be using either that 8K hyperlapse or you'll be shooting even lower resolution. So that is a kind of a big negative if you were interested in using this for hyperlapses. Who knows if we'll see an update that kind of fixes that, but for now, that is kind of the way things stand. All right, but the big hit for this drone right now has nothing to do with that. It is about light input, and that is because if you have this drone at the same settings as any other drone, any other camera, this drone is consistently measuring at least a stop, if not a stop and a third darker than any other camera on the market. And that means that I am either having to boost my ISO by double at least in order to get equivalent light, or I am having to have my shutter speed in order to get that as well. Now, that is bad for two different ways. If you're shooting video or low light, boosting your ISO on these drones, they have small sensors. Anything over 100 ISO can get really grainy, especially in the shadows. You pretty much never want to do that. Also, having a fast shutter speed might be important to you, either for shooting in low light, or if you're shooting photos, you might want to stop some action. There could be a bunch of reasons that you want faster shutter speeds, and it's going to be harder to get that on this drone than anything else. There could be two reasons that we're seeing this. One is the lens, which says it's an f2.8 lens, might not really be an f2.8 lens, more like an f4 lens. And that is going to mean that less light is coming in that camera, and the camera is not compensating for it at all. So what we're seeing is lower light entering the camera because this is really not an f2.8 lens. The other reason this could be is that DJI, for whatever reason, is trying to keep the grain in check and is artificially lowering that sensor output to keep the grain a little bit lower. So it could be anything like that we're seeing this, but for some reason right now, this camera is not measuring identical output of light to any other camera on the market. So I'm curious, if you own this drone right here, are you seeing that as well? If you compare this to any other camera or drone, are you seeing less light from this drone right here? I've seen a couple other tests where people are taking identical images with other drones and the light output is never matching. They're compensating for it with their settings, which is just weird to me. I also haven't seen anything else on this reported. Also, if you are picking up this drone or thinking about getting this drone, is this a non-starter for you? Having to bump your ISO or having less light in the camera is very important and a big reason that we spend so much on lenses and sensors and having these great cameras on this. So this might disrupt everything for you, but I appreciate you hitting like on this, spread the word of this, make sure that people know about it. Let me know if you're having any issues down below. Stay tuned, please subscribe if you want to check out any of these full reviews coming out. This is an amazing drone. I don't want to diss it at all. I have a full review coming out. I love it, but this is kind of a big issue for me and I'm curious your thoughts on it as well. Stay tuned, guys. I got a bunch of other videos and I'll see you soon in a new one coming up next week.